Why don't we just begin at 7:03? The plan is for this to be 1 hour long, as close to 1 hour as possible. Just as a heads up, there have been some Zoom bombing that has happened. Basically, it just means someone takes the stage, and it's kind of difficult with our public format to prevent that from happening. So if someone does start interrupting, saying vile stuff, I'll remove them as quickly as possible. That said, Camille, Unicorn Maze, this evening, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So,
Right.
okay. So, this is the singing bowl, and it's like a Tibetan singing bowl, but it's from Nepal actually, and it's handmade. And this particular bowl is for the heart chakra. And singing bowls help with tuning your chakras in and meditating. You could do it before yoga, you could do it meditating, you could just do it if you just want to feel good. Sometimes I just do it. And the more that you play your singing bowl, the more you become in tune with your singing bowl. So I'm learning, and yeah, I could chime in. Has anybody ever used a singing bowl?
Every day.
Every day. Okay.
So Camille participated in the first in this series, and what we wanted to do is have her play her singing bowl again just for a moment and have a short silence before we begin.
Working. Could you guys hear it?
Good.
Wow, that was nice.
Thank you, Camille. That was so appreciated. And that was, kind of a moment of magic that we had from our first version of this conversation. And we wanted to use that as a way to kick off, to hand off the energy from our first one to our second one. Just to provide a little bit of context, because we're going to jump into conversation right away. I'm going to ask everyone to mute your microphones, except for those participating in the conversation as the conversants. This is built around a project named This is Milwaukee, which is a product of Mary Louise Schumacher and Kevin Miyazaki, who are both here. They did a series of interviews about democracy and citizenship with almost 100 incredible different Milwaukeeans from all walks of life. That's a project they've been doing for a while, actually, and they're continuing to do, and it's still as vital, as important as ever. And when I was actually just on a run in my neighborhood recently, I was one of the interviewees. I just thought, I wonder what Arijit's thinking, and I wonder what Camille's thinking right now. And we made that as an opportunity to have a public conversation. That was our first one, which happened 2 weeks ago. It went pretty well. It felt like a good experience for those who were part of the conversation. And we thought, let's,
My mic working?
have a remarkable, they have a remarkable set of people that they've interviewed. So let's just keep that going. So who we have today, and we've actually decided to forego kind of the traditional introduction that one might do for an event like this, because this isn't a panel conversation, it's more informal. Ken, Dominique, and Ann Basting are all people that I look up to and admire here in the city of Milwaukee, who are brilliant people. Some of them are officially geniuses, actually. And they're just people who contribute incredible things to our community all the time. And particularly in a moment like this moment, it feels like a good one to see what's on their minds. And that being said, let's start I'm going to ask a really basic question of you guys before we jump into the really heady, the really meaty conversations that are about the country we live in and the moment we live in. I just want to ask the three of you, Ken, Dominique, and Ann, how are you doing?
Up and down. This weekend was very challenging. I experienced a break-in at my home. And so that was kind of, in the middle of this pandemic, which caused, I think, for me, heightened anxiety. But today it's looking a little bit better. I'm starting to move back into a space of gratitude, I think.
Sorry to hear that, Dominique. That's awful.
Thank you, Adam.
How the fuck does your house get broken into on lockdown? The fuck?
All right, that person's removed. Ken or Ann?
I'm doing all right. I saw a graphic today that I thought was pretty powerful that was talking about the fear zone, the learning zone, and the growth zone. And you're going from fear to growth as an objective, I guess. And I've experienced all three of those zones with different people I've been around in the last little bit. I've especially experienced some of the fear zone, a little bit of panic from some folks that are near to where I'm at, and it's really it's a real challenge, but a challenge I welcome to try to convert that fear through the process of love, and it's but it's not always easy. So that's where I'm at right now.
Ann, how are you doing?
I would say that I'm still feeling a general state of disorientation, and that I think I am a look ahead, articulate the goal, move in a series of action steps toward that goal kind of person. And I just find it's really hard to be that kind of person right now because there's so much uncertainty, and I think also feeling empathically connected to people who are in a wide state of anxiety and needs, and trying to figure out how to respond just in the moment, like in your own house with kids home from school and parents that you're worried about. It's really hard to balance and try to be that growth person, Ken. It's just so I think there's a lot. My practice is is a lot of self-forgiveness. Like, that was a good idea. It's not going to happen. Maybe not today. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe I can share the idea with somebody else, and they have the wherewithal to make it happen. So that's a lot of what's going on for me.
Thank you. So we're going to do 4 questions if all goes well, and then we'll open up at the end for comments and questions from folks that are at home, not one of the 3 featured folks. And the first one I want to offer, and sorry, everyone has answered these questions already. This now seems like a million years ago whenever they were interviewed, whether that be a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago. It almost feels like a different time and place. So we're going to, informed by this moment, by this time, we'll re-ask these questions and you guys take another stab at these. So the first question is, what is democracy for you?
Well, I voted today, and I think democracy, despite what's going on with our democracy right now, I think democracy as a concept is still valid and a good one. Um, and and I think it's about voice, and I think democracy is about I, the collective voice of the folks that are being governed, and our vote is our power to do that. I do find it quite frustrating how for some democracy has become a chessboard and a power, a way to play power, a way in which to manipulate to play power.
Amen.
But I'll stick to my optimism that it's about collective voice, and I think we've steered in a difficult direction right now, and we need to bring it back.
Kim, what does it look like to bring it back to you? What does that look like?
I was thinking about that today, actually on my bike ride back from voting, and I don't know the answer, but I feel like we need to start over. I mean, I feel like it started a bunch of years ago, a couple hundred years ago here in this country, and it started with a certain set of circumstances, and those circumstances have shifted and morphed and changed. And it feels like we need to gather in a group and do it again with many of the same principles. But I don't know. What do you think, Dominique?
I think it requires. I think the idea is there. I think it requires redefining. And so I think where I struggle is, I have this idea of democracy in my head, right? But I don't think that actually ever existed. And I almost feel like we do ourselves a huge disservice by continuing to refer to it as a democracy, or continue to refer to it in a way that kind of draws our hearts and spirits like toward that idea, right? And so if it's not that, then like, how do we redefine? I don't know how we collectively redefine it. I just feel like there has to be some huge shift that allows us to redefine it for ourselves. I feel like we're kind of faking. Everything, actually. But yeah, I feel like we're kind of faking.
Maybe it's like the notion of I think it's biblical, justice, justice ye shall pursue. That phrase suggests that justice does not currently exist, but that our task is to pursue it. And that I'll just try to keep talking through the screen sharing. That maybe democracy is something we pursue, that we act toward it, which I think you articulate well, Ken, that it's shared governance and representation, but that the gerrymandering is stopping that, and the common sense is not common sense in a sense of shared the commitment of shared safety and shared power is not currently the situation.
And do you feel like did you wrap your response to the first question into that response, or did you want to take a fresh take at the idea of what is democracy for you?
I think I think democracy for me is the confidence that you're being heard. It's that simple, whether it's through the vote or public speech. If we don't feel that, or we don't have access to it, then we need to move toward that direction.
All right, thank you. Do you guys want to move to the next question, or do you have any other responses you want to share to each other?
I was just thinking, just spontaneously, a thought of, it feels like we need to learn to lose, that we actually want to lose. It seems like gerrymandering is about trying to convince, trying to win by using a minority. And it seems like if in a good democracy, I want to hear everyone's voice. And it's not about my voice, it's about everyone's voice. And in that situation, I'm okay if I lose, because we heard everyone's voice.
Do you think
And
that's really true for you?
For me.
Yeah, do you think that's really true? Like if it played out that way?
I think it, well, yeah, I think it is actually.
I'm not so certain for myself. That's why I was asking.
Yeah. I mean, I got to think about it too. But when there have been losses, quite a few of them of late, from my politics, I've accepted the process and said, okay, we gotta just move on from here.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't accepted the fact that we've heard from the voices though.
All right, thank you all very much. I feel like in this moment of the person whose heart is beating really fast, because I'm really hoping none of the names of our participants is going to like share something vile on the screen or say something. I feel like I'm trying to uphold a small piece of democracy in our Zoom call. And it gives me a lot of, yeah, I feel appreciations from my friends who are librarians in this moment of like those public spaces where people could do whatever, and then it's someone's job to be like, hey, don't do that. And maybe that is a good transition into our second question. To what extent are you optimistic about the future of the country? I asked this to you on April 6th, 2020. Given the whipsaw of a day we had today and the whipsaw of the last few weeks, to what extent are you optimistic about the future of the country?
So, well, go ahead, Dominique.
No, go ahead, Anne.
I was going to say, just connecting also to a little bit to what Ken and Dominique were just saying, that the optimism for me comes from when you get a feeling that there is a commitment to a larger vision among a group of people that can hold the differences, and that the losses and gains happen inside of it, but that the sense of the larger vision is strong enough to hold both sides together, or the many sides, the prism. And in some ways, this moment, this, everybody keeps saying unprecedented, at least for the last 100 years, moment of shared experience of pandemic has been one of those things that that seems to hold a larger vision for people, to pull them across the multiple divides. I think that's why today felt particularly challenging to me. I actually felt a little more optimistic that the experience that we're sharing as a country and a world was going to help us over some of those divisions, but that's what was kind of the kick in the gut today.
So I'm eternally optimistic about all the things. I think very similarly, and I feel like where our highest and best path lies is in learning how to be around and negotiate difference. And we just don't, as humans, especially as Americans, have a great muscle built up around that, which kind of, to Ken's point, means that like we go into our corners, right? And then we're like pulling for the power and pulling because it becomes a win or a lose, as opposed to a negotiation. And an appreciation for a different perspective, a different view, a different approach to life generally. And so I feel like if we could, all of the rest of it is kind of out there to me. I'm on video. So I'm like, you're out there. And I feel like the real work is a little bit closer to home, a little bit closer to like, how are we building up our own individual abilities to like be with each other through difference, like to recognize it, to like, how do we have those conversations? I think without, like, we've just gotten so far away from that's why this is all starting to feel a little bit impossible. All that being said, I am still optimistic.
Can you share any practices for crossing the divide of difference?
I think it happens at an individual level, and I think it's all around building up your tolerance skills, et cetera, to have difficult conversations and to really go deep inside yourself to kind of figure out where the stuff you believe in, like what that's rooted in, and like getting clear about that. You know, we're all, no matter what your opinions or beliefs or perspectives are, that was all shaped by the life that you've led up into this point. So I always tell folks that, like, you know, if I was raised in Mississippi and Ohio, and I was like, you know, if I was born in 1945 as a white man in Holly Springs, Mississippi, I would be a 70-year-old white man from Holly Springs, Mississippi. There'd be no difference in me and that guy. I mean, that's his life. I don't know how you expected him to turn out. And so just having a little bit more of an appreciation for that, like whatever that is, it's whatever life made that to be. And that's who we all are. We're who life made us to be. And how do we, I don't know, just like back up a little bit more into that, as opposed to like how that manifests in relationship to me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I said that well, but yeah. I feel like that's where the work lies, like in our ability to be, like, how do you grow your muscle for like being around different? I always talk to people and they're like, I can't be around her. She thinks this or that. And I'm like, she, you know, that's who she is. Her mom was this and then now she's this, and here we are. That doesn't mean you can't be around her. It means you're choosing not to be around her because you don't like how she shows up in the world. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I went on a little bit of a rant there.
Thank you.
I was just going to say that in my work, I have come to kind of advocate a practice of wonder, which is essentially the energizing root of it is curiosity, which is born of a realization of the limits of your own knowledge. And I just, you know, there's fear around admitting the limits of your knowledge, as though that is a giving away of power, mm-hmm. Instead of a learning and a boundary crossing potential. And so whenever you can sense someone refusing a sense of wonder or the core human capacity for curiosity, it feels to me, my first question is, what is the fear that's behind that? Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of a weird, my own little weird way of another way of describing what you're saying, Dominique, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement. It's like, those are the two ways to approach everything, right? It's like either with curiosity or fear, which actually kind of equates to knowing, which I'm like, what could you really know? I mean, I'm 43. What could I really know with 43 years on the planet? I mean, honestly, how much could one know at this point? So those are a lot of plants behind you, Adam Carr.
You know, I moved to a spot, I wanted to sit on the ground so I could stretch. And then I thought, why not show off the plants that are behind me?
Nice.
So while you guys were being profound, I was being vain. So yeah, Ken.
I've decided recently, and this, if anybody who knows me, they would, similar to Dominique, say he's eternally optimistic. But I actually don't think I am. I think I'm just strategic, and that I in the environmental world, when you look at what's going on in the planet, this pandemic is not a surprise. The hurricanes are not a surprise. The plastic use, as I've learned from Marissa Jablonski, is not a surprise, right? I mean, it's there, and it's big and it's real. But that's it's not optimism, I don't think, that motivates me. And I didn't think about this until you asked the questions. So I appreciate the question being asked. But I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's optimism, because I'm definitely highly motivated, and I'm really strategic to just keep pushing forward on the areas that I think need change, and do what I can to affect that change, and then let the cards fall where they fall. But I will tell you just one little bit of, I'm very, very fortunate in having had the opportunity for the last 2 decades of working on the Milwaukee River. And when I walk along the Milwaukee River, I definitely feel optimism, because we as a collective group here in Milwaukee removed some dams and did the good work, and partnered with nature in a way that is a little different. And nature is a fantastic partner, and took off. And the river corridor is a completely different place than it was 20 years ago. And that's because of human effort in partnership with nature. And so those little stories like that, and I see Anne smiling, because I think she has a lot of those in her world with patients with dementia. But that I do feel optimistic in those, and on those levels. There's so many different levels.
So if I could just, Ken, I actually I'm very near the Menominee River and where I live, and my wife, who you know, Glenna Holstein, who works at the Urban Ecology Center, that's where we went on our first date. That's where we got engaged. It's where we brought my family when we were getting married. And walking along that river, the reason I do it, and it's so important to me, is that it does engender a kind of optimism about the possibility of change happening. Because as a Milwaukeean, I learned growing up here that change means things disappearing and never coming back. And some of the work that you guys have done, and others around town, have shown that change can be something generative, and, creative, as opposed to just always destructive. All right. You guys ready for the third question?
We are.
Hang on, can I address why I was smiling?
That is allowed, as long as you don't say anything horrific.
Fine,
Sorry,
I'm like the judge of that.
I'm on like high alert right now. So.
My great grandfather was the manager of a tannery on the river.
Which one?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's as much as I know. That felt like a lot to me to know that.
Sorry about that.
and you know, the generational sweep of change, I think, is maybe where we link too, because in this moment, you know, I remember sitting in a conversation as a Ashoka gathering, and there were young activists who were really having a hard time saying, how do we combat all this? You know, how do we fight for climate justice? How do we fight for this? I'm just, you know, and I said, this is going to seem like a really weird thing to say, but go find a really old person and talk to them about what they've seen, and ask them how you can sustain your energy for the fight. And I feel maybe a little source of optimism there, of cross-generational partnership in this moment, about resilience. That's all. That was why I was smiling.
Thank you. Question number 3. When you think about Milwaukee and its challenges, what are the challenges that feel most pressing right now? So I'll repeat that. And this question was written a long time ago and sounds different probably right now. When you think about Milwaukee and its challenges, what are the challenges that feel most pressing right now?
For me, it remains the same. And I think out of all the questions that I answered during the interview, this is probably the only answer I remember. It's for me, it's the segregation and racial disparities. And I think that's even playing out in the COVID pandemic with not just here, but in a bunch of places, African Americans accounting for a significant majority of the cases and deaths around COVID, and what that means for kind of these larger disparities for our community, and how that's going to continue to play out after COVID. So yeah, that for me is in every way, right? In all the ways that the disparities show up, our biggest challenge.
I would underscore that, and say it's also showing up in our coping mechanisms, access, Wi-Fi, computer, to connectedness, and information, and who has the luxury of isolating and who doesn't. The disparities are really pronounced. Health access to healthcare. The one source of optimism is that in the breaking of everything right now, we're a state that did not expand Medicaid. It is broken. And, this incredible job loss when people don't have access to health, to workplace healthcare, that when all those systems break, there's an opportunity to move in to fix. Whether or not we have that, whether or not that'll happen, I don't know. But out of broken fragments, things can get rebuilt in a different way.
Yeah, I also would underscore this. I mean, I would have said the exact same thing you said, Dominique. So it's no need to repeat it. I'm working on a plan with Willie Caritas and some others to create a bicycle path in the 30th Street corridor, and just striking statistic that I didn't know at all. But if you take everybody in Milwaukee and you say who's within 2 miles of a bike path, so they could get close to a bike path, and who's within half a mile for biking, and who's within half a mile for walking, it's exactly in the poverty lines. So those with means, it's about 70-80% have that 2 mile or half mile access. Those without means, it's about 6%. And that's who cares? That's not healthcare. That's none of that. But that's what I do. It's about access to nature and exercise and all that. And if we can pull off the 30th Street corridor bike path, it actually flips, because it's a pretty narrow swath, and it actually flips so that in Milwaukee, those in poverty actually have higher access. So that's an exciting project.
A shorthand that I sometimes use for that is at the end, one of the upshots of the story of the open housing marches is we'll say that in the last 50 years, we've poured racism into the concrete of our region's infrastructure. that's actually that's not a metaphorical example that you just gave. That's kind of a literal example where you can see that
right.
In stark reality. Anybody else want to? It sounds like there's a lot of accordance and agreement on our most pressing challenges right now in Milwaukee. Anything before we move to our last question? Whoa.
Ken fell down.
Sorry, I
Can I ask
right there,
question about the bike path? That's awesome. How do you? So the creation of the path is one thing, but then for a community that has never necessarily taken, carved a piece out of their lives to engage in bike riding, on back paths, walking, on back, like all the things, right, that come along with that. How are you thinking about that?
Well, it's one of the things. There's actually quite a number of folks who actually do bike in that community. There's an interest group at the Washington Park Ecology Center that's actually directly related to that, and Dream Bikes that does a lot of work with that, and the Bicycle Federation does a lot of work with that. But it's about opportunity. I mean, it's the same thing, right? It's the contrast. We talk about poverty, but what do we mean by poverty? It's not economic poverty. It's opportunity poverty. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm quite answering your question, but it's my optimism says that when you build it, they will come. But it's also engaging. We're not building it as the folks who are engaged in building it are from the community.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, question number 4. What are the qualities that matter most to you in our political leaders?
humility is one.
Maybe there's a lot of information in the silence, but keep going.
It's so hard right now because there's such a void. I think humility, I think transparency, I think that's as far as I'm going to get right now. So other people can chime in.
I feel like I have the same challenge I have with this question that I had with the first question, which is my ideal situation, right? And then what I know or think is required to operate inside of our current system. And so I'm like, who I want it to be would be eaten alive inside of our current system, right? I'm like, if I throw that guy in, he's not coming out on the other side. And so I needed to be a balance of someone that has the enough of the cunning, enough of the savvy, enough of I need all of those things to be in place alongside what are my key ideal traits that I also would love you to carry forward into that snake pit. Honesty would be great. As much as you can muster inside of that. Transparency would be great as much as you can muster. I don't know if you can be a person at a certain level of politics inside of our country and actually possess humility, but that's just me. I don't know what that balance is. So I want you to be strategic and cunning enough, and also somewhere deep in there still have the heart and spirit of I hate to say it this way, but of a good person, enough of that where that shows up in a way that lets me believe for a little bit longer. That was not an actual answer.
No, that was good.
But yeah, I struggle with that question a little bit.
You're describing qualities.
I think the reason I say humility, and I think I'm just going to stick with that one word, is I think you have to know what you don't know and what you can't do, and build a team, a diverse team around you. And I think that's where, in the political landscape, I think that's what's needed is a diverse team. I work with a leadership team, and when it's working, it's beautiful, right? And when I look at we don't need to get political, but our current president should not have the microphone right now. He should just turn it over to the people who know what they're talking about, and that's a good leader would do that in this moment. And so it's the humility to let others lead is really what it is.
Well, I think it's humility in what I said earlier, which is positioning yourself inside of a larger goal. That the goal isn't only you and your own maintenance of power. It's an acknowledgement that other people and other things matter. Um, and there's some people that you just don't get that feeling from. You know, it's really, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters except the maintenance of power. And in a moment when so many people's lives are at stake, I think that's the tragedy of the lack of. I think there's a fetishism of the expression of leadership. There's a couple people who are rising into it, and people are just, oh my God, there it is. It's really fascinating.
And do you think that that folks, when they start on these political paths, start out from one place and then end up in another, or do you think? I mean, how do you think that works? Because I agree with both what you and Ken are saying. I think that at a certain level of government, like your commitment to public service, is what trumps. Because you're making $39,000 a year, and how could it not be that, right? But as you ascend to higher and higher levels of leadership, that I feel like that's where I see either folks drop off, or I see them kind of what you describe, start to prioritize the power and the visibility so like, what are your thoughts on kind of the path for political leaders and what it does to you?
I don't think it's linear. I think it's more of like a constant, you know how you do, I used to resist this because I thought it was too abstract of a term, but it's a practice, like a meditative practice or a spiritual practice or a whatever practice, that you're just always almost in the same way that someone who's battling addiction has to present every day as a new opportunity for decision and choice. That's how I kind of see this, because I do think that somebody who doesn't start out so well on that path can hit a moment when they exercise it really beautifully. And then some who start out committed and doing a great job hit a moment when they don't do it. So they don't handle that decision or that opportunity as well. So I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. Yeah. What do you think, Ben?
Well, I think what Ann said makes a lot of sense, actually. I think it is about, it's about being grounded. I think a good leader has to have practices to stay grounded and has to do the inner work, and I think I don't know if you've seen the thing where it's like a infinity symbol, but you have to do equal amount inside as you do in order to do really big things on the outside. You got to do really big things on the inside, and it's that inner work, which is, I hate to say it, it's sorely lacking in our current top leadership, but I think that grounding is really critical, and not to get too cosmic, but I think vision is really key, and I think the vision comes from that grounding. It comes from being present. It comes from being fully present is when the vision emerges, and that's what I think we need in our leaders.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And let's go cosmic. Come on, let's do it.
Yeah. So it's 7:47. We have about 13 minutes left. If folks want to start typing, actually, let's just do only typing.
You got to save room for my.
What's that, Ken?
Save room at the end for my.
Yes.
The thing I want.
For sure. So if folks can write questions or comments in the chat, actually. So write questions, comments in the chat right now. those can be offered to the group. And if you just want to write a comment, I would be happy to read it. While folks are having a chance to type, I just want to express a lot of appreciation for the three of you. I felt a feeling that I am okay describing as love in the middle of your conversation, just because I've actually been feeling a lot of despondency at the idea of being obese but malnourished. That's a very American invention, and it's a nutrition thing, but in terms of relationships or information, a lot of us are obese but malnourished, and I'm sort of I consume a lot of high calorie media, and hearing you guys talk felt really soothing and wonderful and beautiful, just to hear what some incredible people in the city of Milwaukee, where we all live, what's on your mind right now and all the time. You guys are incredible people. Thank you.
Well, we love you too, Adam.
I was actually going to, what I was going to say, kind of following up on the cosmic, was something that connects with what you just said, Adam, which it all feels to me like this whole leadership question just goes down to that. You call it the golden rule, call it whatever you want. It's just do unto others, baby, right? Like, it's that simple. It's in some respects, right?
To connect to a point you were describing before, is I've found now, as I'm getting old enough to appreciate wisdom, that when I learn something, sometimes I'll be like, oh shit, people have been telling me that whole life, and now I just have the humility to accept it. And it might be something an elder told me a long time ago, and I'm like, you were right the whole time. I just needed to make a lot of mistakes to realize that it is these really core ideas. A question that Unicorn Maze, our friend Camille, offered was, what have y'all done in this time to relax? Do you think this is a time of awakening, in a sense? Actually, let's do the first one first. What have you guys done in this time to relax?
So I've tried to get outdoors as much as possible. I think I can't remember if it was Anne or Ken that said this, but I tend to like work best driving stuff. Like, okay, I have this thing, I was planning on it, get it to point B or C. And I think just being a little bit kind to myself every day and like letting it be whatever it's going to be. So sometimes especially this weekend, like I had all these plans of the stuff I was going to do. And I didn't do any of it. I just took a lot of naps and watched Netflix. And I was like, normally I would completely beat myself up over that. And I just let it go. I was like, apparently that's what you needed to do. So I've just been trying to be kind to myself, I think, more than anything.
What'd you watch on Netflix?
So,
tell me.
I just started watching Unorthodox.
Oh, I love that.
Oh my gosh.
So good.
Okay, Anne, so let's offline this. We have some things to talk about. So
you guys can have a watching party together.
It's so I've always been a little intrigued by the Orthodox Jewish community, because it's like, kind of cloaked in mystery and secrecy. And so it's pretty cool, because you're like, yeah, okay, let me just learn a little bit about this. And I also watched this weekend, which was really good, on HBO. I think it was called, I can't remember the name of it, but it was about the NCAA scandal and the guy that they actually prosecuted for that. But that was really good too.
Cool. Real quick, Anne, Ken, things you've done to relax.
Well, I had a little moment last week when I got overwhelmed. I think just a real fear of being ineffectual, which is probably my biggest fear. All this tremendous energy I have and creativity is just dissipating and not going anywhere. And how do I get it back?
Mm-hmm.
And it was, what's the smallest unit of action? And it was an index card. So I started a daily, and for those of you who know what I'm talking about, it's a little silly, can have a serious edge, but it's just like a daily weird creativity prompt that takes 2 seconds, and it helps me enormously. Actually, the index cards are right up. Can you see that wall back there? Those are my weird little index cards. You can see there's 5 of them, and oh my God, that just starts my day in such a great way. And then I'm a runner, so I get out and try to get out and run. So all those they're posted as videos on my public and private Facebook pages. So you can play along with them and see if they're, I'm also very self-forgiving in them. Like maybe nobody's going to do this, and that's great. Just actually watch it and then don't do it, and then forgive yourself. That's just as good. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
I like watching the various people that are knitting or crocheting or on the screen right now as they're talking. So it's, I think that's a pretty good way to relax. It's not a gift of mine, but I like watching it. But I think for me, it's creation and play are the 2 things that I've found. I was playing badminton yesterday, and without a net, just trying to hit it over a telephone wire. And I felt like I was with my friend Marissa. I just felt like we were little kids again, like I did that when I was 12, maybe trying to hit a badminton thing over a telephone wire. Those kind of things are fun.
I like to imagine the person driving by that saw you that was like, oh, that's Ken Leinbach. just doing Ken stuff.
I would
Not
add
surprised.
to that and say creativity and generosity. You bring those 2 together, and that's just like a balm. It's really great.
Balm. I'm going to read some comments here. Ken said, to me, the critical characteristic of a successful leader is emotional intelligence with the fortitude of a warrior. Arijit said, I love Anne's reference to wonder as a core quality. This is something that Hannah Arendt refers to as the way to avoid problems and political disasters that emerge from the recognition of difference. Mary Louise says, pickle. And Silk, this is a great question. And it kind of, it wove its way into your last comments, I think, a little bit. From Silk, do you feel like you can make a difference in the community right now, or do you feel like life is on hold for you? And you guys were kind of edging at that a little bit, but do you feel like you can make a difference right now, or is life on hold?
So I feel like you can definitely make a difference, or I can only speak for myself. That can definitely make a difference right now. I think I've been trying to resist this idea, and this has been since the beginning of the year, that life is supposed to show up in any way at all. And so this is how my life is showing up right now. Like, this is what it looks like. It's still life. I've also been trying to resist. My mind wants to fast forward to a definite time in the future where things go back to normal. And I've been trying to resist that as well. It causes, it relieves, I think, some of my anxiety, but I think if this has taught, at least so far, if it's taught me nothing else, is that, like, we just don't know what's going to happen. And like, at least I have to let that go to a certain extent. That I think I know what's supposed to be happening or what's going to happen. And I just have to, like, show up in my life as it presents itself every day.
Yeah, I would, that's well said. I think one of the things that I feel lucky that my work with Time Slips has been about inspiring other people's creativity. That part of that is makes it so that it isn't me. It's sort of trying to tickle rhymes with pickle, I'm sorry, but it's a funny word. It's trying to kind of incite or catalyze or invite other people's creativity, because in those moments where I just can't just can't do it. I just have to go take a nap or take a walk. That maybe some of the ripple effects of inviting other people into action can have feel the ripple effects of it so that it continues outside of me, because I can barely do it, barely.
So it is currently 7:58, and we have two things to wrap up with. Kevin Miyazaki pointed out a really good question or point, which is that This Is Milwaukee is the project that we are here, and we're here because of them. They have a Facebook, they're on Instagram, they have a website. They posted over 20 interviews this week on the website. These are really, really beautiful, incredibly done interviews and portraits. So I think I would highly encourage everyone to go check those out. This Is Milwaukee. And I just want to read something from Chad as a way to transition to our very final thing. He's writing about this is an opportunity to expand naturalist skills, and I'm connecting with others on a different way. You can make a difference by just being friendly to those that you see around you. Apart but together is the right way, right? I agree, Chad. And with that, I'm going to hand it to Ken Leinbach, who's going to walk us through kind of a prototype of an idea he's been developing of how one can accomplish being friendly to those around you. Ken.
Great, thanks. So it happens that I'm blessed with friends around the world, and I'm connected to a group in Pakistan quite closely, and someone in Mexico, and an Italian family that's been really struggling. And oh shoot, here we go. I get emotional with these things, but we're all going through the same stuff right now, all over the world. And I was biking past from the hardware store at home, a mailman who's in River West, he's sort of famous because he just always has a positive attitude and waves and friendly. He's a fantastic guy. I don't know his name, but at any rate, I was thinking I want to wave to him, but I want to like wave to him with some form of unity. And then later on, I saw a UPS truck go by, and I thought the same thing. I'm on my bike. It's like, I want to wave to him, but there's like, this is a different time right now. And it struck me that maybe we could create some kind of wave that would go around the world. So my friends in Pakistan would have the same one and the friends in Mexico, that we could have this sort of wave of unity. So then I've been playing around with different waves. I went like one world, and I've stopped people in the parks and said, hey, if we had this wave, what do you think? So here's what I've come up with. My friend Marissa, she and I we're working on it. And then after that, I was biking through the park and I ran into some kids, and they actually improved upon it. And so here it's actually a call and response. You got to take yourself off of mute and off of video. Yeah, I mean, I want to see you, and I want to be able to hear you, everybody.
Only if you're decent.
Yeah, only if you're decent. And so the wave is actually, what we're going to say is all one, right? Because we're all one world. And so the first wave, it's a call and response. So I'm just going to do it. The first wave is just all one, right? All one. So let's do that. All one.
All one.
All one. And if you want to get fancy, you can go all one world. All one world. But I'm happy just with the all one. But then you got to catch it. And you go all one. So I'm going to send it to you.
Wait, let's practice catching first.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah. Catching it is catching it and saying all one.
All one.
Actually, when I was doing it, the all one, I don't know why, but I was doing all one. So two beats. Like the beat of a heart. All one.
Yeah.
All right.
All one.
So I'm going to throw it at you. I'm going to do the thumb all one, and then you're going to catch it with the all one. You ready?
Yep.
All right. All one.
All one.
All right.
Okay, now
let's do it one more time.
How do we?
All right. Oh, but it's a wave. It's a little hard because I'm sitting. Oh, one.
One.
Oh,
One.
One.
Yay. You know, Ken.
Throw it
Right.
once at me. I'm gonna catch it.
Okay, everyone throw it to Ken.
I don't know how to throw it, but I'll try.
Oh, one.
One.
Oh, one.
Oh,
Ken,
Oh,
if this doesn't catch on with the general public, I'm sure there's a Waldorf school that will do it.
do it TikTok.
So
Bye-bye.
yeah, that was it. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. I do want to point out just one thing for, there were probably like 5 different Zoom bombers. There's 30 people who are great. So never let the loud jerks convince you that they're the majority. I'm glad that we had this conversation. I really appreciate everyone for being here. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Adam.
Bye.